to those May Day protests in Paris. Show you some live pictures from the city. Activists have thrown projectiles at the police. There's been a response of tear gas being lobbed. Hundreds of officers have been deployed on the streets of Paris after threats of rioting were spread on social media. We're hearing more than 80 people have been arrested so far. Many others searched. But someone who knows more than I do about what's going on is Hugh Schofield, who is in Paris. And I guess, Hugh, I should say first, this is not confined to the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest movement.
No, it's kicking off down in the Montparnasse region, which is where a regular May the 1st union-organised demonstration march is to take place, and where thousands and thousands of people have been assembling for the last couple of years, for the last couple of hours, the vast majority of whom are either trade unionists or, Pacific-minded Gilets jaunes, yellow vest members. Those two were all mixing together quite peacefully down one end of the boulevard, but at the top of the cortege, where things would start moving, are supposed to start moving quite soon, moving in the direction of Place d'Italie towards the east, there is trouble. And it's trouble because hardline Gilets jaunes, yellow vests, have been joined by black blocs. These are the anarchists, far-left revolutionaries who've come from France, but also from all over Europe, knowing that today was designated by their organisers as a day to make trouble. And they are making trouble, and we're seeing once again these scenes of urban violence, pitting them against police who are out in huge numbers. Just an hour or two ago, I cycled through the area. They are out in force. And we're once again seeing the same scenes that we saw on the Champs-Élysées back in November, back in January and February, when the Gilets jaunes were out in force. But today it's more that the black blocs, this anarchist fringe has taken over, taking advantage of the situation which they knew would be propitious and useful for them, because it's where a lot of people are going to be out contesting and protesting against the policies of Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah, we are seeing pictures of huge numbers gathered in the squares in the Place, Hugh. And as you're saying, several different motivations for these protests. But what is it particularly about Emmanuel Macron's policies that's got them so riled up?
Well, I mean, I think you've got to differentiate between the classic trade unions here and the Gilets jaunes, and then the black blocs on top of that. The classic unions, for whom this is the day of the year, are trying to recover some of the ground that they've lost to the Gilets jaunes. Of course, normally, over the last 50, 60 years, it's been the unions who've led the protestation, contestation and demands from governments demanding more social action, money and so on. They've lost that role in the last year to the Gilets jaunes and the yellow vests in this very sort of changing, fickle, inchoate world in which we live now. It's these new social media organisations which have taken the lead in all of this. The unions would have liked to use May the 1st, today, their traditional day of rallying, to change that round and to reclaim some of the ground in this fight for influence. But they have to face the fact that the Gilets jaunes are much more motivated. They're turning out and infiltrating their own ranks. On top of that, you then have the anarchists and the revolutionaries who merge in some way into the harder line yellow vests as well. I mean, it's porous. I mean, it's not two separate groups. There are yellow vests who are trade unionists, and there are yellow vests who are sympathetic to the black bloc. So even though you start designating these three groups of people, in fact, the one bleeds into the other. And what they have against the government is that it's, from the trade union point of view, that they haven't done enough. They're threatening pension rights and so on. And from the yellow vest point of view, it's that they haven't given enough, that President Macron, despite 2 rounds of announcement in which he's given a lot of ground and a lot of money to the cause to appease the protest from the street, they're saying he hasn't done enough and they want more. But the government's feeling is that they have done enough. They've certainly given a lot of ground and a lot of money in terms of tax cuts, in terms of increasing people's spending power and so on. And they're hoping that these scenes of violence, which now seem to be almost invariably accompanying the Gilets jaunes protests, that they will turn a majority of people away from the Yellow Vest movement and allow the government to feel that it's got the upper hand in all of this. And in a way, the more violence there is, in a way, that serves the government's purpose, in a way, because obviously the vast majority of people in France do not support violence.
Hugh Schofield, thank you. And we'll keep following what's happening in Paris.
May Day in Caracas. And the opposition leadership called its supporters out on the streets again. Most were keen to see and hear from this man, Juan Guaidó, the opposition leader who says the presidency should be his.
What we have sacrificed will not be in vain. It has not been in vain. It has been for our families, for our future. It has been at every turn to achieve our objective.
His profile has again soared after a dramatic move on Tuesday when he appeared on the streets with a group of rebel National Guardsmen. They tried and failed to provoke a military uprising at this airbase. On Wednesday, the same base became the focus of protests again. This group appeared to be using a van as a battering ram to gain access. There were protests in other cities too. Here in Barquisimeto in northwestern Venezuela, there were also several arrests. Back in Caracas, the government held its own, more traditional May Day parade. It's keen to get across the message that not everyone is against it.
I am supporting our revolution, supporting our revolutionary process for the peace of Venezuela, Latin America, and the world.
Earlier, President Maduro had congratulated his armed forces for what he said was the victory against the plotters. And he ridiculed suggestions from the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, that he was ready to go into exile in Cuba.
Mike Pompeo said this afternoon, Maduro had a plane ready to take him to Cuba, but the Russians prevented him from leaving the country. Mr. Pompeo, please, this really is a joke.
Both the president and those that want him gone insist that they are not giving up. And the latest we're hearing from the opposition side is that a series of labour strikes are planned in the coming days. Stephen Gibbs, CGTN, Caracas.
Emily, we are live in Oakland. It is May Day, which is also International Workers' Day, which is why there are hundreds of construction workers out here protesting right now. I have Andreas Kluver with me of the Alameda County Building Trades Council. So explain to me why it's important that these guys are out here already.
Yeah, well, it's really important. First of all, a lot of these guys have come off a lot of jobs and are taking time to really come here and make sure that we don't have these out-of-town developers like Holland Partner coming into Oakland, not making any commitments to use union labor, not making any commitments to hire local workers and bring them into the trades so they can have sustainable careers. That's why we're out here. We want to ensure that there's real benefits coming from these projects to both working people and Oakland residents.
One of the things we keep hearing them chant is that they want a PLA. Can you explain what that is to people and why it's important to them?
Yeah, we've been trying now for a couple of years to get a project labor agreement with the city of Oakland. You know, we've got project labor agreements with the city of Berkeley, city of San Leandro, city of Hayward, city of Alameda. And that's basically an agreement that on city projects that we've got guarantee to use, union labor on those projects, but also to make sure that we have a pathway for Oakland residents, especially disadvantaged residents, to get into the trades through these PLAs and have careers in construction, sustainable middle-class careers.
What's the holdup? Is the city council, do they need to be convinced that this is what is right for the city?
Well, the city council actually passed a resolution last summer to start working on a PLA, and we really haven't had a lot of traction. So our ask really is to ask the city, let's get back on it, let's get this PLA in place. We also want a strong public lands policy. The city council also passed a resolution at the end of last year to ensure that development on public land is going to have a priority for affordable housing, so our working class residents of the city of Oakland can actually afford housing in Oakland, but also to ensure that that housing is being built by union labor.
Okay, Andreas, thank you so much for your time. A lot of moving pieces to this protest today. They will be taking this protest from here at 17th and Webster down to Oakland City Hall in just about an hour and a half.
May 1st was International Labor Day, and marking the day, labor demonstrations have been taking place all across the world, including in Europe. Our Song Kyung has more.
Demonstrators came out in their tens of thousands in many countries across Europe, demanding mainly two things: higher salaries and better working conditions. France saw more than 15,000 demonstrators take to the street for May Day rallies in some 200 towns and cities, including Paris. More than 7,000 police are deployed and responded with tear gas and water cannons. In Germany, tens of thousands gather in major cities, including Berlin, demanding an increase of the minimum wage and the right for collective bargaining. In Greece, labor union rallies paralyzed public transportation, including national rail and island ferries, which had to operate on a reduced schedule all day. Participants marched toward the Greek parliament, calling for an end to exploitation and social inequalities. Meanwhile, Pope Francis offered a May Day prayer for people experiencing the global tragedy of unemployment. He put emphasis on the importance of fair job distribution, saying that having a job is a precondition of human dignity. 서은경, 아리랑 뉴스.
The number of workers and people that you are now noticing is a concrete manifestation of the desperation that workers and the Filipino people are feeling concretely under the present administration. While they brag that the economic conditions are getting better, this is not so in reality, as workers' salaries could hardly make both ends meet.